September 19, 1944. J8 30 hours. The German border near the village of Zweifall. The rain is a cold, persistent hiss. It slicks the steel of Private First Class John Rorick's M1 Garand. He and the rest of the 9th Infantry Division's 60th Infantry Regiment stand at the edge of a forest that looks less like a feature on a map and more like a wall. The trees of 150-foot-tall firs and oaks are so dense, they form a solid black-green canopy, swallowing the morning light. The air smells of wet pine and decay. It is unnervingly quiet. This is the Hürtgen Wald, and the U.S. First Army is about to walk into it. The Allied breakout from Normandy had been a lightning sweep. Paris was liberated. All of France seemed to fall in a matter of weeks. The men of the 9th Division, the old reliables, are confident. They are veterans of North Africa and Sicily. They believe the war will be over by Christmas, but they have just run headlong into the West Wall, the infamous Siegfried Line. And the Hürtgen Forest is its fortress keep. The strategic objective, handed down from General Courtney Hodges' FI Corps, is deceptively simple. Push through 70 square miles of dense forest, cross the Rohr River, and seize the series of dams beyond. High Command fears that if the dams are left in German hands, the Wehrmacht can flood the valleys to the north, stopping the main Allied push into the heart of Germany. The problem is the maps. The American maps are 1/100,000 scale, little more than green splotches. They show a forest. They do not show the 3 years the Germans have spent turning it into a medieval death trap. They do not show the interlocking concrete pillboxes, the hidden artillery positions, the dragon's teeth, anti-tank barriers, or the pre-sighted mortar ranges. The Germans waiting inside are not the shattered remnants fleeing from France. They are veteran divisions like the 275th Infantry, commanded by the ruthless defensive genius, General Feldmarschall Walter Model. They are on their home soil, they are dug in, and they know every trail, every ravine. The whistle blows. The 60th Infantry Regiment moves forward. Within 50 yards, the forest swallows them. Cohesion evaporates. A platoon of 40 men dissolves into scattered squads. Men 20 feet apart lose visual contact. The forest floor is a chaotic tangle of roots, thick undergrowth, and deep, sucking mud. Radios like the heavy SER-300 walkie-talkie are useless. The dense, wet trees absorb the signal. Then the sound. A high-velocity crack that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. An 88mm anti-aircraft gun, fired level. It doesn't hit a man. It hits a tree. This is the first lesson of the Hürtgen. The shells are fused to explode on contact. And in this forest, contact is always available. The steel shell detonates against a massive oak, 60 feet above the forest floor. The concussion is terrifying, but the shrapnel is the true killer. Thousands of red-hot metal fragments, mixed with wooden splinters the size of bayonets, rain down. A man in a foxhole isn't safe. The shrapnel comes straight down, defeating his cover. The GIs call it the tree burst. It is the defining sound of this new hell. The Americans push back, firing their M1s into a wall of green. But where is the enemy? An MG-42 Hitler's buzzsaw opens up. The sound is a terrifying metallic rip, 200 rounds per minute. The men dive, scrambling for cover that isn't there. Medics scream, but they can't move. To stand up is to die. The M4 Sherman tanks, symbols of American industrial might, are worse than useless. They are restricted to the narrow, muddy logging trails and fire breaks. The moment a Sherman clanks into a clearing, a German anti-tank gun, perfectly hidden 500 yards away, opens fire. The first shot hits the track. The second hits the turret. The tank brews up, a burning steel coffin, blocking the only available path for the rest of the column. The infantry is forced to detour, climbing steep, muddy ravines, straight into pre-planned ambushes. By nightfall on that first day, the 9th Division has advanced. Barely. They have paid for every yard in blood. The men try to dig in, but the ground is a shallow layer of soil over unforgiving slate. Their small entrenching tools break. The rain turns to sleet. Wounded men, lost in the dark, begin to freeze. The survivors huddle in their shallow scrapes, listening to the trees cracking above them as the 88s and 105mm shells walk back and forth all night long. They have entered the meat grinder, and this is only the beginning. Section 2. The Bloody Bucket and the Call Trail. October 26, 1944, 14 hours. A muddy track near Grenadier. The men of the 9th Infantry Division are ghosts. They file out of the forest canopy in a stumbling, silent column. Their faces are gray, their eyes are thousand-yard stares, and their uniforms are rotting, rain-soaked rags. They have lost 8,000 men to gain 3 miles. They don't look at the fresh troops moving up to replace them. These new men are from the 28th Infantry Division, the Keystone Division of Pennsylvania. They are relatively green, having seen hard fighting in Normandy, but nothing to prepare them for this. They march in good order, their M1s clean, their confidence intact. They joke as they pass the shattered, exhausted veterans of the 9th. The Keystone Division's patch, a red keystone, quickly earns a new, dark nickname from the Germans and soon from the GIs themselves. The Blutiger Eimer. The Bloody Bucket. Their objective is the town of Schmidt. To American command, Schmidt is vital. It sits on high ground, overlooking the Rower River dams. To take Schmidt, the 28th must first take the village of Wassenach, then send its 112th Infantry Regiment down a shortcut marked on their maps. This shortcut has a name, the Call Trail, November 2nd, 1944, 09 hours. The Call Trail. The attack begins in a cold, driving rain that quickly turns to snow. The 112th Regiment, led by Lieutenant Colonel Carl T. Peterson, starts its descent. The Call Trail is not a road. It is a narrow, winding cart path cut into the side of a sheer, densely forested gorge. It drops 500 feet to the Call River, a shallow but treacherous stream, then climbs just as steeply up the other side toward Schmidt. The trail is slick with months of rain, decaying leaves, and slick black mud. It is barely wide enough for a jeep, let alone the Sherman tanks of the 707th Tank Battalion assigned to support them. The moment the 112th enters the gorge, the Germans, who have held this ground for years, open up. General Lieutenant Hans Schmidt's 272nd Volksgrenadier Division has fortified every inch. Mortar tubes nested in deep, timber-covered pits begin their work. The shells, 81mm and 120mm, come whispering down, followed by the familiar, horrifying crack of tree bursts. Men of the 112th claw at the steep, muddy banks. There is no cover. There is no retreat. The trail becomes a funnel of slaughter. Medics are hit as they try to reach the wounded. Radios soaked and deep in the gorge are useless. Colonel Peterson is cut off from his command. Despite the carnage, small units of the 112th, driven by sheer grit, cross the icy river, holding their rifles above their heads. They secure a small bridgehead. One by one, the engineers, under a hail of machine gun fire, work to clear the trail. The lead Sherman tank, A Company 13, inches its way down the slope. The mud is so deep the tank's belly plates are scraping the earth. The driver, blinded by the tight path and the rain, slips. The 32-ton tank slides off the trail, its track spinning uselessly, its bulk now blocking the path for every vehicle behind it. The 112th Infantry Regiment is now completely on its own. But incredibly, by nightfall on November 3rd, after 36 hours of relentless close-quarters fighting, 2 battalions of the 112th have done the impossible. They have pushed through the gorge up the other side and seized the ruins of Schmidt. They are exhausted, low on ammunition, and have taken horrific casualties. But they hold the objective. They try to dig in, but the ground in Schmidt's rubble-strewn churchyard is frozen. They huddle in shell craters, desperately trying to get their radios to work, praying for the tanks and the resupply that are stuck back on the Call Trail. They have no idea what is gathering in the dark forest just beyond the town. The German 89th Infantry Division, supported by the attached Tiger and Panther tanks of the 116th Panzer Division, has been given one simple order: annihilate the Americans in Schmidt. The men of the Bloody Bucket have kicked the hornet's nest, and the swarm is about to descend. Section 3. The Hell of the Call Trail, November 5th, 1944. 05:30 hours. The churchyard, Schmidt. The pre-dawn air is razor sharp. A freezing fog clings to the shattered skeletons of the houses. The surviving men of the 112th Infantry are huddled in shallow foxholes, their breath pluming. They have been without resupply for 2 days. Their ammunition is low. Their few anti-tank mines are gone. Their only hope, the 707th Tank Battalion, is still trapped in the gorge miles behind them. A new sound cuts through the intermittent mortar fire. It's not the familiar crack of an 88. It's a deep, grinding rumble. The clank, clank, clank of heavy steel treads on stone. From the fog, 3 monsters emerge. They are not the past KPFW IVs the GIs are used to. These are Panther tanks. Their sloped 80mm frontal armor is impervious to the 2.36-inch rockets of the American bazookas. Behind them, gray uniformed Volksgrenadiers advance, their MG-42s spitting tracers. The German counterattack on Schmidt has begun. The first Panther fires. Its long 75mm cannon discharges with a deafening whump. The shell hits the stone church, which the Americans are using as a command post and aid station. The structure disintegrates. It is a massacre. The GIs are overrun. PFC Frank Argubar, a bazooka man, frantically fires his weapon at a Panther's flank. The rocket explodes with a clang, doing nothing. The tank's coaxial machine gun swivels and cuts him in half. The American line, which was never more than a series of disconnected holes, simply dissolves. It is no longer a battle, it is a rout. The order is given to fall back to the call trail. The trail, which had been a funnel of death on the way in, now becomes a gauntlet of pure, undiluted terror on the way out. The Germans have zeroed in on every inch of it. As the shattered remnants of the 112th Regiment scramble back into the gorge, they are met by a curtain of steel. The Germans on the high ground opposite, the Vossenack-Kammerscheidt Ridge, have perfect observation. Their 120mm mortars and 105mm artillery pieces walk up and down the narrow path. Tree bursts fill the air, raining shrapnel and wooden splinters onto the panicked men. The trail is a scene from Dante. It is choked with the dead, the dying, and the routing. Wounded men, left on stretchers from the initial assault, are hit again. Medics trying to drag men to cover are killed. The mud is so deep that it pulls boots off men's feet. It is littered with abandoned equipment, rifles, helmets, radio sets, and bazookas, all dropped in the desperate, animalistic flight for survival. A group of GIs trying to bypass the blocked trail attempts to climb the steep, wooded slope. A German MG-42 dug in and waiting scythed through them. The survivors slide back down the bank, bringing a small avalanche of mud and rocks with them. In the middle of the chaos, Lieutenant Colonel Carl T. Peterson, the regimental commander, is last seen trying to rally his men, his face a mask of mud and blood before he is cut down. But the Germans aren't just firing from the ridges. They are now actively pursuing the Americans down the trail. This is where one man, Private First Class Gino J. Merlee of the 18th Infantry, becomes a legend. Sent to cover the retreat, Merlee sets up his light machine gun at a choke point. He is attacked by a force of over 100 German soldiers. He kills dozens. His gun jams. He clears it. He is wounded. He keeps firing. He runs out of ammunition and uses his rifle. His rifle is shot from his hands. When the Germans finally overrun his position, they find him feigning death, his bayonet in his hand, ready for one last lunge. So impressed are the Germans by his suicidal bravery, they do not kill him. They pause to look at him, giving the last of the American stragglers time to escape before taking Merlee prisoner. He would survive the war and receive the Medal of Honor. By nightfall on November 7th, the battle for Schmidt is over. The 112th Infantry Regiment has ceased to exist as a fighting force. Of the 2,200 men who began the assault, over 1,600 are killed, wounded, or captured. The Bloody Bucket Division has been bled white, and the Americans have gained absolutely nothing. Section 4. The Ivy Division and the Sickness of the Woods, November 10, 1944. A muddy firebreak west of Hürtgen Village. Sergeant Frank Walker of the 4th Infantry Division, the Ivy Division, crouches behind a massive splintered fir tree. He is a veteran. He landed on Utah Beach on D-Day. He fought through the nightmarish hedgerows of the Bocage. He thought he knew what hard fighting was. He was wrong. In front of him, 2 men from his squad are trying to dig a foxhole. The clink-clink of their entrenching tools on the shallow slate rock is maddeningly loud. "For Christ's sake, keep it down," Walker hisses, knowing it's useless. The sound of a shovel can draw a mortar shell. The 4th Division, pulled from a brief rest, has been plunged into the forest to relieve the shattered, bloody bucket and take up the fight. They are a crack unit, but as they move into the positions held by the 28th, they are met by ghosts. The survivors of the call trail are hollow-eyed, spattered in mud, many of them weeping or sitting and rocking, staring at nothing. They don't speak. They just hand over their waterlogged foxholes, littered with empty K-ration cans and sodden cardboard, and stumble to the rear. For Walker and the men of the 4th, the first 48 hours are a descent into a new kind of war. This isn't a war of maneuver. It is a war of claustrophobia. The forest is a physical, oppressive weight. The sky is gone, hidden by the 150-foot pines. The world is a 30-yard circle of wet, black trunks and sucking mud. Every man feels like he has a target painted on his back. The Germans are invisible, yet they are everywhere. A new enemy emerges, one that doesn't fire a shot. Trench foot. The foxholes are never holes. They are shallow scrapes that fill instantly with icy water and mud. Men stand in this freezing slush for days. Their feet swell, turn white and blue and then black. The flesh begins to rot. The smell is sickening. "Change your socks," the lieutenant's order, repeating doctrine from training. But the men's socks are sodden. Their spare pair is soaked. Their boots, rotting from the constant damp, are impossible to remove from their swollen, dead-feeling feet. Soon, men are crawling to the aid station. Their war ended not by a bullet, but by the mud. Then there is the psychological rot. The GIs call it Hürtgen sickness. It's the constant random shelling. The whoosh of an incoming screaming Mimi Navalwerfer rocket. The snap hiss of a mortar shell just seconds before the crack of a tree burst. You never see the enemy. You never see a German soldier. You only see the result of his work. A wire, thin and taut across a trail, is attached to a bouncing Betty S mine. A soldier trips it. The mine jumps 4 feet in the air and explodes at groin level, shredding the men around it. You see a body in a U.S. uniform, propped against a tree. "He's alive!" a new replacement shouts, running to help. The veteran Walker screams, "No," but it's too late. The Germans have wired the corpse. The explosion takes the legs off the would-be rescuer. This is the war in the Hürtgen. It is a war against the forest itself. Men snap. A private in Walker's squad, after watching his friend get hit by a tree burst, stands up in his foxhole and unloads his entire 8-round M1 clip at a rustling noise. It was the wind. The next second, a single, sharp crack from a German sniper, a ghost in the trees, hits the private squarely in the chest. The 4th Division, like the 9th and the 28th before it, is now fully committed. The brass on the maps, far from the forest, still demand objectives. The town of Hürtgen itself must be taken. The attack is scheduled for November 16th. But first, the 12th Infantry Regiment of the 4th Division is ordered to clear the Hürtgen-Kleinhau-Großhau triangle. To do this, they must advance through a patch of woods that will become infamous. The Germans call it Wild Wild Boar, a dense, trackless wilderness, perfectly pre-sited for artillery. And now it is also protected by the first blizzards of the winter. The grinder has new grist, and it is beginning to snow. Section 5. The Town of the Dead. November 21st, 1944. Ottawa 6 hours. The Wildsow Forest, east of the Weisser Stream. It is 17 degrees Fahrenheit. The snow is 8 inches deep, a deceptively clean white blanket covering a layer of frozen mud, and the unburied dead of 3 different divisions. For the men of the 4th Division's 12th Infantry Regiment, the world has shrunk to the man in front of them and the patch of snow they are trying to cross. They have been fighting for this patch of woods for 5 days. 5 days of non-stop, close-quarters combat. The objective is the town of Hürtgen itself, a simple dot on the map. But to get there, they must cross a 1,000-yard open field that rises toward the town, a field the Germans have turned into a perfect kill zone. Lieutenant Eric F. Wood Jr., a platoon leader, looks at his men. They are no longer the crack Ivy Division. They are shivering, gaunt scarecrows, their faces blackened by frostbite and gunpowder. Many are suffering from combat exhaustion. Their hands shake uncontrollably, their eyes twitch, and they often fail to respond to direct orders, not from defiance, but from a mind that is simply shut down. The attack order comes anyway. The whistle is a thin, pathetic sound in the frozen air. The men rise from their icy foxholes, and the world explodes. German machine guns, hidden in the stone houses of Hürtgen village, and heavy mortars, hidden in the forest beyond, have had this field pre-sighted for weeks. The rip of the MG-42s cuts the air. Men fall, their bodies dark stains on the snow. They don't scream. The cold seems to deaden the sound. The GIs run, firing their M1s from the hip, not to hit anything, but just to make noise to answer the terror. The 12th Regiment is hit by a wall of steel, but it does not break. It is an attack driven not by tactics, but by a desperate, suicidal inertia. They reach the first houses of the village. This is not a liberation. It is an extermination. The village of Hürtgen is a fortress. Every stone house is a pillbox, its cellar reinforced with concrete and steel, its windows sandbagged with tiny firing slits for machine guns. The Germans from the 354th Volksgrenadier Division are fighting from their own homes. They will not retreat. Sergeant Walker's squad kicks in the door of a small stone farmhouse. It's a trap. A German potato masher grenade, its handle wired to the door, drops from the lintel. "Grenade!" Walker screams, diving back into the snow. The crump of the explosion blows the door frame and the lead scout back into the street. They use the only weapon that works, the M4 Sherman tank. A tank which has miraculously survived the mines on the road clanks forward. Its 75mm gun is almost useless against the reinforced stone. "Use the Ronson," a GI screams, referring to the Sherman flamethrower variant. The tank edges forward, its long nozzle probing a cellar window. A stream of liquid fire shoots into the darkness. A new sound joins the battle, not the crack of rifles, but the high, thin, animal shrieking of men being burned alive. The GIs, their faces grim, move in, their M3 grease guns spraying the smoke-filled rooms. This is how the town is taken. One house, one cellar, one attic at a time. The fighting is with bayonets, entrenching tools, and bare fists in the rubble. By November 28th, after 7 more days of this grinding horror, the 12th Infantry Regiment has finally secured the village of Hürtgen. The regimental commander sends a message to headquarters. "Hürtgen is taken." The cost is catastrophic. The 12th Infantry Regiment has lost over 1,500 men to take a pile of smoldering, corpse-filled rubble. The entire 4th Infantry Division is, for all practical purposes, destroyed as a fighting unit. It has sustained over 7,000 casualties in 3 weeks. The GIs stand in the ruins, breathing in the smell of cordite, snow, and burnt flesh. They have won. And as they look east from the captured ridge, the new objective comes into view. It is another village just a few thousand yards away, Kleinhau. Beyond that, Grosshau. The battle is not over. The grinder is just pulling them deeper. High Command, still obsessed with the Rohrdams, pulls the shattered 4th Division off the line. They are replaced by the 8th Infantry Division and the 5th Armored Division. The machine demands fresh bodies. Section 6, The Iron Horse and the Forest of Corpses. December the 2nd, 1944, 07:15 hours. The Hürtgen-Kleinhau Road. The exhaust from the M4 Sherman tank, Avenger billows white in the sub-freezing air. Staff Sergeant Jim Elson, the commander, stands in the open turret, his hands raw inside his gloves. He is with Combat Command R of the 5th Armored Division, the Victory Division. They are the Iron Fist, the cavalry, sent to do what the infantry could not: punch through. But as Avenger lurches onto the narrow, ice-slicked logging trail, Elson feels a cold dread. This is not tank country. This is a tank trap. To his left and right, the men of the 8th Infantry Division, the Pathfinder Division, are moving through the trees. They are the third wave of fresh infantry to be fed into this grinder. As they advance, they step over the frozen, snow-dusted bodies of the 4th Division soldiers they are replacing. The forest is now a vast, open-air morgue. Helmets lie half-buried in the snow, rifles lean against trees, and frozen hands, blue and white, reach from the icy mud. The 8th Division infantrymen, many of them replacements, try not to look. They are walking through their own future. Elson's tank is confined to the trail. The plan is for the armor to lead the way, blasting the German pillboxes. But the Germans, masters of defense, have anticipated this. The road is a mine gas. The lead tank in the column, Betty Lou, suddenly lurches. Its front end jumping 3 feet in the air. A deafening crack echoes through the woods, followed by the high-pitched scream of grinding metal. It has hit a stack of 3 tellermines. The explosion shears off the left track and rips a hole in the belly armor. The driver is dead. The co-driver is screaming. "Bail out! Bail out!" The lead tank's commander shouts over the radio, his voice cracking with panic. The turret hatch flies open, and 2 men jump out, landing in the snow. They are met by a sound. Thup, 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 thup. A pre-sighted German MG-42 dug into a reinforced bunker 200 yards up the trail opens fire. The tracers, starkly visible in the dawn gloom, stitch across the snow. The 2 tankers are cut down before they can take 2 steps. The Avenger is now the lead tank, and it is trapped. The burning Betty Lou blocks the path forward. They cannot reverse as the rest of the column is packed in behind them. "Fire! 2 o'clock! That bunker!" Elson screams into his intercom, dropping into the turret. The 75mm gun booms. The shell explodes against the front of the German bunker. It does nothing. The bunker is made of 10-foot thick logs and concrete. This is the new battle. The 8th Infantry must now leave the protection of the tanks and fight the bunkers one by one. Men with Bangalore torpedoes and satchel charges crawl on their bellies through the snow, under a constant hail of mortar fire, trying to get close enough to shove a charge into a firing slit. The battle for Kleinhau and Grossau becomes a slow, methodical, and brutal process of extermination. The Americans have learned one thing from the slaughter of the 9th, 28th, and 4th Divisions: overwhelming firepower. U.S. artillery battalions, lines of 150 mm long tom guns, are brought up. They systematically obliterate the villages before the infantry attacks. For 48 hours, the sky rains steel. The towns of Kleinhau and Grossau are reduced to moonscapes, less towns and more geographic expressions of rubble. When the 8th Division finally moves in, they are not fighting house to house. They are fighting crater to crater against German survivors who are dazed, concussed, but still fighting from the reinforced cellars and tunnels that remain. By December 12th, the towns are taken. The 5th Armored Division, having lost dozens of tanks to mines and Panzerfausts, finally breaks out of the forest's eastern edge. They stand on the high ground, the objective they were given in September. They look down onto the plains of the Roer River, and they can see the dams. They are still 6 miles away. Still firmly in German hands. Section 7. The Final Insult, December 13th, 1944. 04 Naud hours. The ruins of Bergstein, below Hill 400. It is pitch black, and the air is so cold it feels like breathing glass. Captain James Big Jim E. Rudder, commander of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, the same men who scaled the 100-foot cliffs of Pointe du Hoc on D-Day, huddles with his men. They are the last desperate card to be played. The 8th, 28th, and 83rd Divisions have all been bled white, trying to take the one piece of ground that truly matters. Hill 400, known as Castle Hill. It is not a hill. It is a 400-meter-high volcanic plug of rock that dominates the entire Roer Valley. From its peak, a German forward artillery observer can see every American move for miles. It is the linchpin for the dams. The battle for this hill has been a microcosm of the Hürtgen, bloody, attritional, and a failure. Rudder's Rangers are not infantry. They are commandos, and they will attack in a way the Germans do not expect. Straight up the sheer, icy rock face in the dark, without artillery preparation. At 04:15 they move. They climb, using knives and bayonets to get handholds in the frozen earth. They move in total silence, bypassing the bouncing Betty tripwires they can feel but not see. At the summit, a handful of exhausted, freezing German sentries are huddling in deep, concrete-lined bunkers. The Rangers storm the trench line at 04:30. It is a fight with K-bar knives, rifle butts, and bare hands. The Germans, stunned, are overwhelmed in minutes. By 04:50, a single flare shoots up. Hill 400 is taken. The Germans, furious, immediately counterattack. For the next 48 hours, the 500 Rangers on the summit are subjected to an artillery barrage of an intensity not yet seen in the war. Every piece of German artillery within range is ordered to fire on that one tiny hill. The Rangers, with no cover on the bare rock, are blown to pieces. But they hold. When they are finally relieved on December 15th, only 188 of the 500 Rangers who took the hill are able to walk off it. The Americans now stand on the high ground. They have battered their way through the green hell from September to December. They have suffered over 33,000 casualties, 24,000 from combat, 9,000 more from trench foot, frostbite, and combat exhaustion. They have paid a price in blood higher than Gettysburg. They have destroyed at least 6 U.S. divisions. And for what? The Roer River dams. They can see them. But the Germans still hold the most important one, the Schwammenau. They still control the floodgates. Then the final brutal irony of the Hürtgen Forest is revealed. December 16, 1944. 05:30 hours, 50 miles south, in the quiet Ardennes sector. A sound, far greater than any barrage yet heard, ruptures the dawn. Over 1,000 German artillery pieces open fire. General Feldmarschall von Rundstedt's Wacht am Rhein, the Watch on the Rhine, has begun. The Battle of the Bulge. The Hürtgen Forest, the sector that had been a meat grinder for 3 months, suddenly goes silent. The Germans had used the battle as a screen. They had held the U.S. First Army, pinning it, bleeding it, distracting it, while Hitler massed his last great panzer armies just to the south. The entire Hürtgen campaign had been a strategic diversion, and the Americans had walked right into it. The battle that was fought to prevent the Germans from flooding the Ruhr Valley now ends in the ultimate failure. In February 1945, as the Americans are finally poised to cross, the Germans simply open the Schwammenau Dam, floodgates themselves. A wall of water surges into the valley, creating a 30-mile-long lake. It stops the U.S. Ninth Army cold, delaying the final Allied push into Germany by another 2 weeks. The Battle of the Hürtgen Forest is over. It is not a victory. It is a case study in futility. It is a story of unmatched human courage and of strategic, catastrophic failure. The men who died there, their bodies frozen into the mud, bought nothing. The forest, silent and dark, keeps its secrets. A 70-square-mile graveyard that U.S. commanders would try for decades to forget. Thank you for watching.